Welcome back to Alberta Primetime and our Wednesday Vocal Point panel on crime. With us tonight, former Edmonton Police Chief and President of Rayner Consulting, Fred Rayner. Also here in studio, criminal defense lawyer Rod Gregory. And in Calgary this evening, Jason Van Rassel, crime reporter with the Calgary Herald. Welcome back to Alberta Primetime, all of you.
Thank you.
Edmonton Police considering using body-mounted cameras. Fred, cameras are being proposed as a better option than perhaps dashboard cameras. First, what's your take? How are they useful?
Oh, I think it's an excellent idea. You know, we started out years back with the cameras in the vehicles to give us a perspective of what officers are dealing with on the road. I think that the body-mounted cameras are a great idea for beat officers walking the street on White Avenue, Jasper Avenue, West Edmonton Mall. So I welcome and encourage the idea. And
interesting, Rod, we were speaking earlier before we came on to do the segment, and I was surprised by your answer. You actually think this is good for defense lawyers as well?
Well, it's surprising that the defense lawyers will agree with the former police chief, but we like them because we have to guard civil liberties, and we always want to make sure that the police aren't using excessive force. And I think Fred talked about the use of direct evidence. So we can see what actually happened when our clients are with the police and being dealt with by the police. So there are obviously civil liberty concerns, but we also like the recording of actual evidence. So the dashboard cameras are good too for highway patrol and things like that.
Okay. Jason, what's your take on it overall in terms of just citizens getting a better picture of what's going on sort of with justice in our province, I suppose? Do you like the idea of these cameras?
Well, the rank and file officers here in Calgary have been in support of dashboard cameras for some time. There's a big expense involved. In 2004, when they priced out dashboard cameras here in Calgary, they priced it out at about $1 million, and at that time balked at the cost. Edmonton is looking at about $4.5 million currently for the body cameras. Calgary's got a couple hundred more officers, so if dashboard cameras here in Calgary are still only on the wish list, I think body cameras are even further down the road. Both these gentlemen are correct. There's certainly an evidentiary value to it. If you talk to police, they will tell you that as well that there's an officer's safety value to it, having another set of eyes watching and following what's going on, as well as a record after the fact. And it does help, I think, the citizen complaint process. You know, with an objective record, some police forces that are using these things are finding that complaints are dealt with far more quickly and expeditiously, and that will actually save time and expense in terms of investigating citizen complaints as well.
Okay, Fred, obviously in your role as police chief in Edmonton, you went through decisions around cameras and their use. So I'll ask you to play devil's advocate for us, since you're all in agreement that they could be a potentially good thing. But what are the concerns here? Are there privacy issues that police would need to be aware of before these get put into effect?
I think the thing that's going to slow down the introduction of this technology will be all of the policy creation and the process creation that has to go into regulating how we collect video information, how we store video information, how we use it either for complaints process where a complaint is lodged against a member, or possibly how we introduce it in court, and then where that video is of no use to us, how we go about purging it. So it's the collection, the retention, its use, its purging, all of that stuff is going to take some time to create. I'm sure the Privacy Commissioner would look at this and want to monitor it, as he did when we introduced cameras on White Avenue. We worked very closely with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, make sure that we had all those procedures in place, the T's crossed, the I's dotted. And so I think that's the piece that needs to be worked out. But we live in the information age, and I think these cameras are inevitable. I think they'll be here one day, one way or the other.
Okay, Rod, what's your take on sort of some of those potential concerns? What would you be keeping an eye on?
Well, I agree. We all love technology, and the problem is technology is really gone out of control. So George Orwell, if we read 2004 again, it's here. And there is a slippery slope about where do we go next, and that's the flip side. So as a defense lawyer, we like to see cameras in cells to make sure our clients are being treated properly and those kinds of things. But do we then move from, as Fred said, cameras on White Ave during special events? Well, do they then stay there permanently? So it's the integration of more and more surveillance by government. And all it takes is one mistake or one bad incident where someone's privacy rights are violated, and the question is it worth it?
Right. Jason, last word on this before we go to break?
I made my last comments, I guess, with an assumption, perhaps a naive one, that if these cameras are coming in and becoming the norm, that we're going to follow some of the same ground rules that we've had already. So some good caveats by you folks in Edmonton. I think, though, the real impediment, as I said earlier, is going to be cost. When you have Calgary Police not really finding $1 million to completely outfit the force with dashboard cameras, body cameras are even further away than that. So I think that it's just plain practicality, I think, that's going to be the biggest barrier, at least in this city. Edmonton will make their own decision.
Well, and I think even beat cops being taken off if budgets were cut have been a point of discussion recently in Calgary. So certainly cameras maybe not on the horizon anytime soon down there. Great stuff, guys. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will talk about who will and who will not appear at the Mayor Thorpe tragedy hearing. Back with the Wednesday Crime Panel. Stay with us. And we're back with the Wednesday Vocal Point panel on crime. Rod, I'm going to start with you on this one. Judge deciding last week that Sean Cheeseman or Sean Hennessy rather, and Dennis Cheeseman, both who pled guilty to manslaughter and of course the Mayor Thorpe tragedy, will not be involved at all in the fatality inquiry in January of 2011. First, your take on the decision, and do you like it?
Well, I think it's the right decision. I think the father had a lot to do with getting his son's case involved through the media, and really I don't think they had a legitimate argument to get intervener status. Maybe in some obscure way they would have some relevant evidence as a witness in the inquiry, but certainly not to make submissions.
Jason, just give us a breakdown of sort of how these fatality inquiries work and why in this instance the judge would have made this decision.
Well, fatality inquiries are not exercises in blame, even though they often examine criminal cases or instances where criminal action or charges or convictions were the result. So they're essentially fact-finding missions. You know, you're taking a look at this in hindsight and speaking with people involved, getting testimony, gathering evidence to try and find a way to prevent a recurrence of whatever the tragedy happened to be, whether it was an accident or whether it was some sort of criminal event. The judge made the decision in this particular case in part because he felt that their evidence that had already been given at the criminal trial was on the record, and it wasn't really necessary to go back and speak with them again. And I think especially in the role of an intervener, you know, there may have been a different nuance if they were called as witnesses, but I think to paraphrase the judge and maybe put some words in his mouth, it just seemed that he thought an intervener status was a little too much.
Okay, Fred, the decisions made around who attends and who does not attend these inquiries, is it pretty stringent? Is it quite a complete examination by the judge before this decision is made? Oh,
yeah, most definitely, and I believe it's made with the purpose in mind. A fatality inquiry is not a criminal trial. It's not an appeal. Its purpose is to look at what happened, what can be done, as Jason pointed out, to prevent problems reoccurring in the future. It, to me, will look like an operational, standard police operational review, only in a fatality inquiry setting. They'll be looking at how the police communicated with each other, what tools and equipment were at their disposal, whether the policy and procedures that govern how they respond to high-risk events was appropriate. Are there some lessons learned so that we can, you know, heaven forbid, avoid any kind of duplication of this tragedy in the future? And I'm sure that the judge weighed what information these gentlemen might have contributed and thought, to respect the true focus of a fatality inquiry, he'll call who he feels will best serve that purpose.
Okay, is there still a potential, Rod, that if something comes up through this inquiry that these guys could still be brought forward?
Well, I think there's a possibility, and I think it's remote, that they could be brought forward as witnesses. But interveners make legal arguments and legal submissions. You don't have to be a lawyer to do that, and there's all kinds of inquiries, not just fatality inquiries, where people seek intervener status. But I really can't see why they would have standing to become interveners in this fact-finding mission that Fred's talking about, which is a police operational review, really, to find out what happened and can it be prevented.
Okay. Any word on this, last word on this, Jason, or do you want to head right to organized crime?
Well, just briefly, I want to thank Fred for eloquently finding the phrase that I was searching for, and that, yeah, I think what they were going to bring to the table, the judge had decided was beyond the scope of what this inquiry is supposed to accomplish. That's what I was trying to say. Fred said it better than me, and I'm thankful for it.
Okay. Well, we'll give you a chance to redeem yourself now. We don't have a ton of time left, but 25th Annual Report on Organized Crime by Criminal Intelligence Service Canada was released on Friday. Says that organized crime across Canada is logging on to the internet, using the internet just like the rest of us. Jason, I suppose not at all surprising that they would be using technology this way, but are there some instances that you can see where it's really giving organized crime a potential leg up?
Well, I mean, just the fact that the internet is borderless. So anytime a criminal can operate in one jurisdiction and target people in another jurisdiction, that's going to give them an advantage. You know, and we also know that technology allows people to hide. They can obscure their location, you know, in many ways by bouncing things up through different servers using false IPs, internet protocols, that sort of thing. So really, technology is a potential advantage for organized crime, but you know, we've seen in recent years that law enforcement is catching up. Law enforcement's integrating and talking to their partners across jurisdictional boundaries to try and fight this sort of thing. It's always a constant back and forth battle, and I imagine it's that way today, and 'tis always will be so.
Yeah, and you talk to law enforcement, it's certainly changed their job and how they do it these days. We are out of time. Great discussion as always, gentlemen. Thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.